Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of In the Frame here at Glasgow Film Festival. I'm so happy that you've decided to join us again today for the third episode, where we are focusing on the best of British films that are taking part in the Glasgow Film Festival programme this year. In the Frame is a live series that we've been running, where we do a little bit more of a deep dive into the programme, and I invite some wonderful guests on to chat with me and have a little natter about film, because we're all missing that interaction and chat about film. We'd all love to be in the GFT right now, having a drink and a chat, but you know what? This will do. This is lovely. So my name's Kumar. I'm the programme coordinator. And as I said, I welcome two wonderful guests on to the show every week. And this week is no exception. So I'm going to hand over to my guests to let them say a little bit about themselves and who they are and what they do. And then we'll dive straight into it. So maybe if we start with you, Katie, and then we'll move on to you, Jamie, and you just want to say a little hello to everyone out there.
Hi, thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Go. I'm a freelance culture journalist and film critic, and write about film for places like Skinny and ID and Vice and Little White Lies. And I'm very excited to talk about, British film with you all.
And my name's Jamie Dunn. I'm the film editor at Skinny, and I write various other places. I'm a big fan of Glasgow Film Festival. The Skinny partners with them, but I've been going to Glasgow Film Festival since the very start, and I've been writing about it for years. So it's very sad that this is going to be the first year I'm not actually going to be in the GFT to see these films, but we've got to do what we've got to do, and I look forward to the virtual programme as well.
Yeah, we'll make the best of it, and what we've managed to achieve with the programme is no short spectacular. If I do say so myself, I'm biased, but obviously I have so much pride in what we're presenting this year. So yeah, thank you so much for both coming along and having a chat. So we're going to dive straight into it and talk about some of the films that you guys have had the chance to watch and why you are so excited for the Glasgow Film Festival audience to see the films as well. So the first film we're going to focus on is one of Katie's picks, and it is a world premiere that is a debut feature by director Molly Morrison, and it's Sweetheart. Now, Katie, if you want to maybe just give us a little insight into why you chose the film and what it is you think that the audience can expect and why they should be buying a ticket for it.
Yeah, I didn't know about Molly Morrison, to be honest, before I saw the description, and the film was premiering at GFF. But I'm so glad I did, because it's such a lovely film. It's really a really beautiful, sort of tender queer coming of age story about a teenage girl who is taken on a family holiday to a caravan park kind of against her wishes, and there she's kind of a moody teenager, but she meets another girl who's a lifeguard, and they begin a sort of really sweet, tender love story. And yeah, it's just one of those films that I think you can watch it if you're a young person and you want to see the sort of film, but there's loads in it if you're maybe a little bit older as well. There's some really great comedy, family drama as well going on. And I think that, it's a sort of film that I'm really glad is being made in the UK at the moment. And I think that, the more queer coming of age stories, the better. I think if people like things like Booksmart or How to Build a Girl recently, then I think they'd really like this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Booksmart's a really good one to bring up. Actually, I hadn't even thought of that one, because the one I've kind of been sort of saying it's got Days of the Bagnall Summer sort of vibe, that sort of British like summer holiday sort of thing going on. But this one, obviously, like you say, is a sort of queer love story. And what I liked about the film, and what I really like about the film that Molly has managed to do, is it's all coming from lived experience, and it feels very authentic from that point of view. But also the film's not really about her coming out, which a lot of films like this can shift most of its focus on. This film's more about how she deals with navigating first love and dealing with that, a family who are still it's more about the aftermath rather than the actual moment where she does, come out to her family. So it's about first love and family and navigating the perils of the teenage your teenage years, that awkward sort of time period, which I've still not recovered from, to be honest. But luckily, I'm old enough and ugly enough now to not worry about it anymore. But it's great ensemble performance by all the cast, and I think for us to be able to stream the world premiere at Glasgow Film Festival, it's just it's great. There's so many good performances in it, like I say, and Molly Morrison is really brought as a wonderfully gentle, sort of sweet film, and it just feels like one of those films that you want to put on like just a nice night and just chill and just sort of sink into the story. And it's a really lovely film. Jamie, I don't know if you've had any sort of look at the Sweetheart, the synopsis, anything. I don't know if you had any prior knowledge to it, but
it's one I'm really looking forward to. I mean, I think obviously, if you think of like French films do this kind of story all the time, like kind of going on a summer holiday, and it's the summer that changes your life forever, or like even Call Me by Your Name, that kind of film. So it's nice kind of to see it in the kind of British context, and I imagine it will be a little bit less magical than is sometimes depicted in like a French Eric Romer film or something like that, So I think it would maybe a bit more down to earth. That's what
a different kind of magic.
Yeah, absolutely. A different kind of magic is the best way to describe it. Very British, but in a way that I think we'll all connect with. So Sweetheart screens on Wednesday, the 3rd of March at 6 p.m. is when it goes live on our platform. So if you've not got a ticket for it, I do recommend that one. Like I say, world premiere, so it's first chance for audiences to see it. So so moving on to one of Jamie's picks now, and it's a film that I think a lot of people might have heard rumors about. It has screened at other festivals, done really well. It's the second feature from Ben Sharrock, and it is Limbo. So Limbo is screening on Wednesday, 3rd of March as well, actually, 8:30, so you can double bill it with Sweetheart, I think, so it's worked out quite nicely. But Jamie, give us a little insight on Limbo and why you've chosen this one.
Yeah, well, it's an extraordinary film. It's a film about refugees, and if you say this is a Scottish film about refugees, that might conjure up a pitch in your head of a kind of really grim, worthy social realist drama that's going to be fully kind of shot in a gritty style or whatever. And Ben Sharrock's Limbo is the exact opposite of that film. It takes place in this kind of unnamed, wind-battered island in the Outer Hebrides, and it just follows the lives of several refugees who have been left there kind of indefinitely while their asylum claim is being sort of processed. So it's a kind of film very much about that absurdity of that situation. You might have travelled this amazing, perilous journey from your home country. So you've left that behind, and when you arrive at your actual destination, you're stuck in this kind of weird no man's land where you can't work, you can't get on with your life, and then you've got this kind of fear of being deported at any time from the kind of Home Office, who sort of seem to have a kind of, just take ages with these processes and sort of put the kind of refugees through some sort of unwanted or unnecessary kind of pain. The funny thing about the film is Ben Sharrock chose a kind of remote island in Scotland because he thought that was a kind of inherently funny idea, putting these people on this island. But then obviously, just when the film was kind of premiered in Toronto, that Priti Patel suggests the exact same thing, So his film, he started off with this kind of ridiculous situation of being putting these people on this island, and then that's actually what the Home Office is actually thinking about, or was thinking about last year. So I think what strikes you first about the film is how it looks. Ben Sharrock has a really kind of strong visual sensibility, and the way he places cameras within the frame is really deliberate, and his use of colour and the kind of general design of the film, is really striking, and it just makes it feel like kind of few degrees off reality, which makes it a bit different from the usual kind of British film. I should also say it's really funny. It's a comedy, and it's kind of really dry and deadpan, and as are the performances. All the kind of characters walk around with this kind of deadpan poker face. And I think I fell in love with this film from the first scene, actually. It's like, it opens in this kind of ridiculous, clueless cultural awareness class. And I think if you identify with that first scene, you'll probably love this film. It's really full of absurdist humour. It reminded me a little bit of Wes Anderson and Aki Kaurismäki. I think that's who it's been compared to a lot because of its that deadpan style and just theme of absurdist humour that runs through.
Absolutely, yeah. I think the way that it's shot is Ben's just shot it so brilliantly, and the way that he composes the scenes on camera is just and like you say, it gives you that sort of Wes Anderson sort of vibe and things. And it's just very witty, and as you said, it's deadpan, but I found it very engaging, and it totally draws you into the story. As you mentioned rightly, the first scene is if you are hooked from that, then you're in for the whole thing. But regardless of that, I think it's just a film that even if it does take you a little longer to get into it, it will slowly draw you in, and you get wrapped up in the lives of these characters, and the main character Omar, played by Amir Mazdi, is tremendous. Like, his performance is great, and it's very like gentle and subtle the way he does certain things on screen, and when you get the chance to watch the film, you'll see what I mean. But yeah, really, really wonderful. And Ben, obviously, it's a second feature, and you can see that he's really kind of, carving out his own nice little sort of niche as well of his style, and it's just he's the type of director that I watch his stuff now, and I think, he's going to get to that point where he's going to have his fanatics, like it's really that proper following, in that sort of way that maybe like a Wes Anderson or someone like that has. But Katie, is Limbo something have you had the chance to see Limbo yet? Or is it a film that you've got on your radar?
Yeah, I had the chance to see it last year, and I really loved it for all the reasons that you and Jamie have spoken about. I mean, I think it's fantastic, and I think also one that will really be quite like a crowd pleaser as well. I imagine if it was playing in the GFT in real life, it would be one of those films that has a massive big audience and things, and because there is so much humor and wit to it, you can kind of imagine the laughter, but we can recreate that virtually, I'm sure. So yeah, I'm just really excited for more people to see it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone will be in the living rooms dancing to Hot Chocolate, still a kiss. But and just as you touched on as well, Jamie, it's a bit like Life Imitates Art. It's very, when you watch it, especially now, it's crazy how much you look at the real world and what's going on in Britain, and it's just crazy to see how the striking similarities from something that Ben himself was like, he would never have imagined that that's actually a thing that would happen, really. As I said,
it's really nice seeing this story kind of brought down to a human level, because so often with these stories, refugees are seen as this kind of mass of people, like on the news or in documentaries, whereas here it's really focusing on a few individual stories. And I think that's kind of where the kind of humanity comes from. It's the fact that we're really go into the kind of the day-to-day lives of what it's like to be a refugee and waiting and not knowing if you can stay here, if you're going to be taken back to a country where you don't feel safe. So it's in that way it's really moving.
Absolutely. And also just to note as well, like as I said, it screens on Wednesday, 3rd of March. The cast is great, and one of the cast is actually in another film that was screening at Glasgow Film Festival, and he plays the character Wasif, and it's Ola Arabai, and he is in A Brixton Tale, which we're also screening at Glasgow Film Festival. And yeah, that's a nice little link for us. And again, that's another British film. It's a film I definitely would recommend that people seek out. It's a film that focuses on a lot of topics, and it looks at how marginalised communities in London can be exploited, and it also looks at being a teenager in London and dealing with the pressures of like social media and things like that, and the Ola himself as the main character in the film is so wonderful, and he puts in such a great performance. So that's in a little aside, just in regards to Limbo, because there is that sort of link there. So I would definitely recommend everyone watches Limbo, please buy a ticket and then check it out if you haven't had a chance to see it already. It truly is wonderful. And A Brixton Tale is a nice little aside because it stars Ola from Limbo as well. So, keeping on the sort of world premiere theme that we had with Sweetheart, we've got another world premiere, which Katie, you watched, and it's Killing Escobar. Now, Killing Escobar is screening on Sunday the 7th of March at 6:15. It goes live on the platform, and it's a second feature and the first documentary feature from director David Whitney. And it covers basically a very Scottish story. So, Katie, maybe if you want to give us a little bit of a background on it and your thoughts on it from watching it.
Yeah, I kind of gravitated towards it because I really like true crime. And I mean, the title kind of says it all. It's about killing Pablo Escobar, who was the Colombian kind of drug king of the world in the 80s. And yeah, it's really interesting because you think of a figure like that has been covered so many times in so many different ways. And this is such a unique kind of lens to see it through and see that story through, because it's about a Scottish ex-special forces guy called Peter McLeese, I think. And he's hired basically to head up this team who are going to kill, they've been, hired to assassinate Escobar. And yet, sort of this stranger than fiction story, he's in the present day, in his sort of late 70s, 80s now, looking back at this time when he was sort of sent off on this kind of adventure. And it's really interestingly made because it's a mixture of reenactment and archive footage and sort of talking heads interviews, which sounds like it could be quite a lot, but actually it's done really nicely and really smoothly. And it's very sort of glossy and really well produced. And I think it's really just was really fascinating. I mean, in terms of the geopolitics of the time, but also looking at Glasgow at that time as well, and sort of his story and why he went into this job and took this job as well. So I think that, if you're looking for a really thrilling, dramatic doc, which, sometimes those things don't go together, then you could, then this is perfect for you.
Yeah, and it has that sort of Glasgow connection there, which I think a lot of people in the audience, fans of the festival, will gravitate towards. But yeah, it's a film that you watch, and the thing that's most striking about it is that, and David mentions this as well in the chat that I had with him. He says that he couldn't believe how much material he had access to, because basically these group of mercenaries essentially were filming everything, like when they were doing all their training and stuff. So the access that David had to this material just meant that he could sculpt this story so much bigger and better than it would have been through talking heads or recreations alone. So there's a lot of actual footage from the guys doing their training, and it's a film that will definitely create conversation, because whether you agree with what they're doing or not, it's history, and it's something that did happen. So it's one of those situations where, regardless of your feelings on it, I think you can probably appreciate the storytelling at play. And Peter McAleese is a very interesting character in the film, and you'll see that as you watch the film. There's a lot of things that contribute to make him who he is and made him who he is. And you can see he has went on quite a journey through his life, and it's just very interesting, like you say. And I think the Scottish connection there is going to bring people in. But absolutely, I think Killing Escobar, world premiere at Glasgow Film Festival, Sunday the 7th of March. Definitely a after dinner Sunday night, lie on the couch sort of documentary to just sink their teeth into. Definitely one of those ones that I think people will be like, how have I not heard this story before? So really good choice in that one. So keeping in with that sort of Scottish theme, we're going to move on to one of Jamie's picks now, and hopefully I don't butcher the name of this, but I'm going to say it. It's Yoram, and it's Boat Song. And that is also having its world premiere at Glasgow Film Festival. There was a version that screened on iPlayer, I believe, but this is a different extended version that gives you a bit more. So that's screening on the 20th of February. That's a Sunday, and it's in the afternoon. So I think it's perfect sort of film to watch on a lazy Sunday. So Jamie, it's by director Alistair Cole. It's a second feature doc as well. Do you maybe want to talk a little bit about what the film is and your sort of thoughts on it in general?
Yeah, sure. I should have said that Limbo actually was the first film shot in use, so this is another kind of connection to the Western Isles as well. It's the first feature film entirely shot in Gaelic, I believe, which is pretty interesting, which I think makes it kind of notable straight away. And it's just a really kind of beautiful love letter to the various, fishing communities of the Outer Hebrides. Like you say, it's by Alistair Cole, and he's collaborated with folk musician Aidan O'Rourke, who's created this kind of really beautiful, haunting score for the film. And the way it's put together is really creative. It's not your kind of typical talking head doc by any means. It's a very kind of lyrical film. And it's made up of this amazing archive audio, I should say. So it's like Cole's taken this audio tape from people from various communities and islands, telling stories and talking about their day-to-day lives. I think I counted 50 different voices listed in the credits. None of the people featured in the film, that's all kind of older audio that's taken from starting just after the Second World War all the way up to the mid-70s. So it's really kind of like an oral history, basically, of this way of life in the kind of early to mid-20th century. So on the soundtrack, we hear all these stories of the past, and it's paired with this kind of beautiful mosaic of the islands today, which Cole shot. Really kind of beautiful shots of people at work on boats and kind of fishing factories, but also kind of the landscape and the kind of nature of the islands as well. So you're kind of invited to compare what we're hearing on screen. So these kind of crazy stories of like how hard it was to be, to this way of life, the toughness of fishing these seas and, the kind of daily toil compared with now. And it's also blends in folk tales, there's stories of mermaids and pixies and tall tales, with kind of folk song that kind of bleeds all the way through it. So some of the stories might resonate a bit more than others. I felt while watching it was a bit like, I don't know if you've ever read Moby Dick, and there's long chapters of Moby Dick where it's all about various whale gutting and things like that, and that's what the film's like. There's whole sections where it's just telling you about the type of fish you catch at different seasons and where you would send it and how you processed it and how you gutted it. So it's got all that, but it's also got these kind of more personal stories, like amazing stories of loss, how like whole families would be lost because of one storm, or like there's a brother who has to kind of make a life or death decision because one of his brother's boat is capsized, and he has to decide, do I save my brother or do I save my crew and get these men back on shore? So it's really dramatic in a way, even though it's just old audio combined with modern day footage. So it's a bit like kind of sitting around the fire, like it's a bit like you would sit at the fire with your gran and she would tell you old stories of being at war. And that's kind of the feeling. It's kind of really warm and inviting and sort of, just recording this way of life that, maybe not everyone is aware of. And I found all that really moving. And like I say, it's just full of tragedy as well. And also it's also really current. Obviously, if you look at the news, fishing communities are constantly being discussed, and what Brexit is going to mean for our fishing communities. Is it going to just kill out these communities and sort of end that way of life? So it's a real document of how that life has changed already and how it's going to change in the future. So it's coming out at just the perfect time when I think these kind of communities are all in our minds. I found it a kind of really beautiful love letter and sort of really wonderfully put together. I think the film works best when the old stories match the current footage. There's a great story of when they catch a whale by accident, and that's paired with this kind of funny image of like them catching a rock in their nets and their trawlers when they were catching krill. So it's a really good film. It's and obviously it's a landmark film for being the first Gaelic film as well.
Yeah. I really like that comparison. When you were talking about it, that's what popped in my head. I was like, yeah, it's exactly a very intimate film that you feel like you would be best paired sitting around the fire, and or you could put the fireplace thing on Netflix in the corner if you want instead, if you don't have a fire like I don't, but just sitting around and soaking in. It's the sound, like say, Sound Archive is insane. It's like crazy what they're able to do with that, and it's just very visually interesting to look at, and just intimate, and just kind of shines a light on the communities that have this wonderful relationship with the sea and fish, and having it being all in Gaelic as well. It's like you say, it's one of those things that I think I'm certainly guilty of never really thinking about the Gaelic language, but that connection, Scottish Gaelic and stuff like that connection that has to Scotland is something that I think a lot of people maybe just overlook these days and don't think about. And it's nice to be reminded of that sort of that aspect and things. And it's just, I agree with everything you say. I think it is really just a wonderfully warm, sort of inviting film that I think you'll just sit down and sink into and enjoy the stories, because everyone's met someone who's just a gifted storyteller or has watched something that's got a gifted storyteller, and you just get captivated by it. And Katie, I don't know if you'd had much knowledge of the film prior to Jamie's wonderful explanation in there, but do you have any thoughts on Yoram, and is it something you've had the chance to look into beforehand?
Sadly, I haven't seen the film yet, but I think you and Jamie sold it very well. I can't wait to see it. I've heard a bit about it because, as you were saying, it's the first sort of film of its kind in Gaelic, and big Moby Dick fan. So I will be. I'm excited. You've sold it, and I will be drinking some whiskey and watching it with everyone else, I think.
There you go. That's the tagline. Do you like Moby Dick? Well, watch this film. It'll take you a lot less time than it would to read Moby Dick.
I should say it's not all about fishing as well. There's like a lot of hijinks about like the pranks we'd play and the romances that we'd have with various islands. We find out that the men from Lewis, for example, are very handsome, more handsome than other islands. So there's lots of hijinks and romance as well.
That's good to know. Good to know. I'll write that down somewhere so that I remember that. But so moving on to another film that's having its world premiere at Glasgow Film Festival. This is a world premiere heavy episode of In the Frame. It's one of Katie's picks, and you get a chance to see Eye of the Storm, which is directed by Anthony Baxter, who is a favourite of Glasgow Film Festival. His last film, Flint, screened at GFF20 just last year, and that's having its world premiere on Sunday the 28th of February at 6:15. So again, that's one that you can lead on. You can watch Yoram and then lead on Eye of the Storm. Katie, if you want, maybe just give us a little bit of background on this, what the film's about, and your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's another sort of stormy documentary. I feel like it kind of, the fact that we've picked quite a lot of docs shows how strong British documentary is at the moment. But Anthony Baxter, I'm sure that people watching will have heard of or seen at least one of his documentaries. He's kind of a very big Scottish documentary filmmaker. He made, like you were saying, Flint, which is a really fantastic film, and all those Donald Trump golf course documentaries, kind of before Trump became a thing we all had to worry about, or we did. So I'm sure that a lot of people have seen his films before, and he's a really brilliant documentary filmmaker. And he sort of has, in some ways moved away from Scotland with making Flint, and sort of he has always been quite focused on what's happening overseas, especially in America. But I feel like Eye of the Storm is almost like his homecoming in some ways. He's kind of coming back and doing something a little bit different, because he usually makes documentaries that have quite a big social issue at the heart of them. And this film is about a painter, James Morrison, who I didn't know very well before the documentary. He sadly died last year, but he was, a very famous and beloved Glaswegian painter. He was losing his eyesight at the end of his life, and had a lot of health issues. And Baxter sort of follows him in the last few years and sort of documents his coming to terms with losing his eyesight and his health issues, and him reflecting on his life and how, you know, incredible his career was as an artist. And yeah, it's fascinating. I think that if you know a lot about James Morrison, you like it obviously because it's about him. But if you don't know anything about him, I think you'd also get a lot from it because there's so much there. I mean, it's a beautiful portrait of a painter, but also is kind of bigger than that as well. It's about the history of Glasgow and Glasgow's artists, and also, you know, further afield, Morrison painted a lot in the Arctic as well, and kind of captures these beautiful landscapes that don't exist anymore because of climate change. And yeah, he's kind of coming to terms with aging and death. So there is, you know, a real air of sadness to it, but at the same time, it's a celebration of his life. And I think that it's a really beautifully made film as well. There's loads of animations by, I think, Katrina Black, who's a fantastic artist in her own right. And yeah, it feels like a lovely gift that Baxter's kind of given back to Glasgow and Glasgow's art scene in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think I think you touched on it perfectly by saying, obviously Anthony has done a lot has done films in the past. So he's maybe focused on, for instance, Donald Trump and Flint as well last year. Not really Scottish centric as such in terms of, you know, moving away from that, but this one is very much, it's almost like he's coming home and he's focused on something that clearly is, I think, close to his heart and his you know, really has a passion for. And I think this film is a really good sort of way to see James Morrison as he's cut, sort of, because it charts, you know, his sort of career and his life, and it leads up to sort of from his early years to his sort of last public exhibition that he was able to do. And yeah, like I say, I was much the same as you, Kate. I didn't have too much prior knowledge of James beforehand. I must admit, I'm not the biggest art buff in terms of that sort of thing. So yeah, it was a really interesting documentary that focuses on his life, and obviously towards the end, like you say, he had fading eyesight and was suffering from health problems. But you know, at no point does the film turn into a woe is me sort of scenario and stuff. And it is very much you know, tenderly sort of made and a nice fitting sort of, you know, tribute to James and his work. So I think Anthony's done a really good job in that sense. And just to touch on the animations as well, like you say, Katrina Black has done the animations for big chunks of this film, and it really adds a completely different dimension, but just makes it feel so much more sort of, just resonates with you a bit more with having the striking visual art that's coming on screen and tying it into the story of James. And yeah, it's just a wonderful, wonderful, you know, sort of tribute to a wonderful artist, I think. And it was reminiscent to me of a film we screened, I think, 2 years ago or last year at Glasgow Film Festival called Prophecy, which was a film about an artist and a Glasgow artist, and that film was specifically just about showing you how he sculpts one big, you know, masterpiece. But again, it's just one of those films that, as someone who's not massively into art and doesn't have much knowledge on it, these films are the sort of like really good ways to learn a bit more and don't bog you down too much with maybe aspects of the sort of the story that you maybe wouldn't, you know, connect with as much. So yeah, really wonderful. And yeah, Jamie, I don't know if Eye of Storm was something that caught your eye, but I would definitely recommend it if it's if you've got the time.
Yeah, I haven't. I've always liked Anthony's films. They're always kind of very muckraking, campaigning type films, you know, aren't they? So it's quite interesting that he's moving into this different sort of more biographical region. Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how that fits, because he's trained as a journalist, so his films have always been very journalistic, and he's always chasing a story. So I wonder how it's going to be if this is more of maybe a more poetic side to his filmmaking, which might be quite interesting. I'm interested to see how he's using the animation as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, I think that's a good point. He is very it's very much Anthony's style, but you can tell he's maybe going a little bit different with it, and it's because of the subject matter. I think that's the main thing. He's clearly got a passion for it. So, like I say, Firestorm, 28th of February. That's 6:15. That goes live on the platform. That's a Sunday. So again, double bill that with Yoram. You're golden. So moving on to the last of our picks, and it's one for you, Jamie. And it's screening on the 26th of February, and it's at 1:15 in the afternoon. Goes live on the platform, and it's the UK premiere of Steelers, the world's first gay rugby club. So it's a wonderful documentary directed by Eamon Ashton Atkinson. It's his first feature. And yeah, Jamie, tell us a little bit about the film and what you took from it.
So yeah, if Yoram was very much a kind of creative, poetic documentary, this is much more kind of straightforward, I guess, in its telling. But nothing wrong with that. So it introduces to this club the King Cross Steelers, who were formed in '95, and it just follows kind of several members of the team. It takes place all during the Bingham Cup, which is this kind of big competition that happens with gay teams from all around the world who come to Amsterdam and compete against each other. And I guess the film is trying to challenge all the kind of preconceptions people might have about, this kind of very manly sport of rugby. These men are all kind of the men who are on the team are all kind of super confident off the pitch. But for some of them, because of years of bullying and kind of the old-fashioned ideas of manliness and all that, there's a kind of idea that they've kind of had a lack of confidence on the pitch. So it's about them kind of overcoming that and sort of kind of pushing through and kind of breaking down barriers. So it's also kind of just a really good sports movie. In a way, it's a shame it's such a low budget film, because I kind of really kind of wish they had a bit more coverage of the games. Like, I'm not exactly a rugby fan, but it's really tense. Some of the games, because the team are kind of the underdogs and not been performing that well, and then actually they kind of turn it around for this game, and there's kind of it's kind of quite tense. And I think if you're just into sports movies, it's definitely one to watch. But it's also really moving. It follows three characters. One of them is Simon. He's only been out for a few years, and he's kind of still working through kind of years of repression and denial, and he's suffering with his mental health. And he's kind of a really shy guy, but he kind of comes alive on the rugby pitch. And for him, the game has been his lifeline, and these kind of group of men who he's kind of joined on, they became his kind of family, and and they're kind of helping him work through a kind of really tough time. And then at the opposite end, you have Drew, who's this completely flamboyant, out and proud American who's on the team, and he's kind of trying to smash kind of all concepts of toxic masculinity. He's very much about showing that the gay community is not just one thing. So he can be like the toughest, hard as nails scrum half on the pitch, but then off the pitch, he's got this kind of other life as a kind of a amazing drag act called Drewlicious, and he'll go to these kind of cabarets and be fabulous and amazing, and so it's just like he's kind of really pushing the boundaries and saying, actually, I'm not going to be in any box that society is going to give me. I can be the hard man on the pitch, and I can be this kind of flamboyant, extravagant man on stage. And then the third character it follows is Nick. It's actually who's the head coach, and she is just this kick-ass woman rugby player. She played for Wales back in the day, and she just knows rugby inside out. She's like an absolute genius, and she's kind of turned around this team which were underperforming, and she's got them to be real contenders for this prize, which they've never won, despite being the first rugby club. They have never actually picked up the Bingham Cup. So it's about her, how she's kind of been the kind of mother figure to these men, but it's also how she's kind of fighting prejudice, because obviously, she's a woman in rugby, and I guess she's up against all the same prejudice that the men are up against. So like all the male referees still don't take her seriously or ignore her from the sidelines. She's got to constantly battle the kind of patriarchy of like rugby. But she's just a brilliant coach, and you see that she's just great at leading these men, and like a great leader. So for her, she's just taking this unperforming team and sort of bringing out the best of them, and allowing them to kind of express themselves and be more confident on the pitch. And then threaded through that, the filmmaker Edmund, it also tells a bit about his background and why he wanted to make the film as well. So, and again, he's a bit like Simon in that he had a kind of troubled upbringing, and it took him a bit of time to come to terms with his sexuality. And rugby for him again has been an amazing escape and allowed him to kind of work through a lot of things on the field that he was also working through off it. So yeah, it's really uplifting. I defy anyone to watch it and not shed a tear. It's got some great moments, but it's also really funny. These guys are hilarious, and there's a lot of scenes with them just mucking around in their pants, like between games. And if you want to see some hot guys in their pants as well, that's definitely a reason to come and watch the film. They're not shy of showing a bit of skin to get the crowd in. So yes, if you're interested in LGBTQ stories, if you're interested in rugby, interested in sports docs, and just interested in these issues, I think it does it all really well. Like I say, it's very straightforward. It's not like fancy filmmaking or anything like that. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it is very straightforward, and it's a very joyous film. And I think the key to it is that it's just telling the story of these guys who are just like very infectious and like just funny people who you feel like you're just so glad that they're getting the chance to do something that they enjoy, and again, not being a massive rugby fan, it was a film that I was like, rugby, but the story behind the rugby is what draws you in. And to be honest, as you say, when you're watching it, you get caught up in the sports side of it, and you really want to, you're cheering these guys on, and it does obviously focus on three sort of specific characters. Also got people in the doc, but it does also shine a sort of wider sort of light on the tournament and the team and things like that. So yeah, just does a really good job at letting all these guys get their personalities to shine through, and just like a nice, joyous documentary to watch that obviously does deal with some specific tough issues that these guys deal with, but again, just feels like an important documentary that and I would agree as well that I think you would struggle not to watch it, not laugh and maybe shed a tear at points throughout. So yeah, Steelers, Friday 26th of February in the afternoon. So I would recommend if you've taken a long weekend, that's a good way to kick off your long weekend. So we've covered sort of 3 films from you guys. And we're going to just cover one sort of more film, and then have a chat with a very special guest who's going to come on in a minute or two, with the aid of some wonderful tech from backstage. But we've got Geoff Ellis who's joining us. Hi, Geoff, how you doing?
Hi.
It's nice to have you. Thanks so much for joining us, and it's so nice to have you. So Glasgow Film Festival, we are showing creation stories on the opening night of Glasgow Film Festival at 8:30, and that's a film that deals with, it's written by Nick Moran, written by Irvin Welsh, directed by Nick Moran, and it's about Creation Records' Alan McGee. Now, I know you haven't seen the film, Geoff, but just in regards to Glasgow Film Festival and Glasgow Film, I've always found, music and film do go hand in hand, and I know certainly the music community in Glasgow is facing a lot of issues at the moment, much like cinemas are, because we can't be open and we can't have people in the screens and stuff. So, before we get into the more sort of tricky, meat of that sort of discussion, if maybe you want to just say hello to everyone and what you do, and just a little hello to everyone that's watching.
Okay, well, hello, and thank you for inviting me on. My name's Geoff Ellis. I run DF Concerts. We're based in Glasgow. I'm a big film fan myself, so I've always been into film. I actually wanted to work in film. That's what I tried to do initially, and ended up working in music anyway. And enjoyed that over the years. So I started off working at Middlesex Poly. Started off as a journalist, writing about the gigs, and then got involved in the delivery of the gigs, and then became the entertainment manager for the student union, and went on to the Marquee Club in London, and then moved up to Scotland in 1992 initially to run King Tut's as a venue, and then just did more and more concert promotions at Barrowland, the SECC, and around Scotland generally. Worked on Tina Park for 23 years. And then I launched the Transmit Festival in 2017 in Glasgow, along with Glasgow Summer Sessions, which had started a few years before that, and Edinburgh Summer Sessions as well. So work with artists from grassroots level, brand new artists like, Zoe Graham, Walt Disco, Ninth Wave, right up to major artists like AC/DC, Beyonce, Eminem, The Killers, etc. So, working with a lot of Scottish acts, a lot of international acts, and through running King Tut's, obviously, there's a link there with Creation Stories and the signing of Oasis. I wasn't there on that night, but I Concord to sit, ask if they could play, and the rest is history with it.
Yeah, and like I say, with Creation Stories, which is a film about Alan McGee and Creation Records, King Tut's is a big sort of part of that history, and as I said, Glasgow music community will be, and as the music community all around the world would be suffering, but specifically focusing on Glasgow for us, how has it been for you since the pandemic hit? And I know obviously it's tough for everyone, and the cinemas have hit it really hard, but you would argue that maybe cinemas, there's some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, that the social distancing and stuff could probably work a bit easier in our scenario, whereas live gigs and live music, I don't know how feasible that is to do until the pandemic's out of the way. So how's it been for you in the past year or so since it's kicked in?
Yeah, it's been terrible, really. I think my last gig I was at was Lewis Capaldi at the Hydro, and we've had nothing since, literally. That's, the whole of the live music industry really has been pretty much closed down, and we don't know when we're going to reopen again. We're hopeful for this year, but it's certainly not going to be in the next few weeks at least. We're hopeful that maybe later on in the summer we can get back. But the key thing is live music cannot operate viably with physical distancing. It just doesn't work because the costs are so high, and the way the economics work, you just can't run venues at, King Tut's, I think we'd have 17 people in at 2 meters social distancing. So, you take that to the Hydro, I think they can get about 2,500 in. But the show still would have the same cost because you've got the same size of PA, you've got to get to people on the back row, you still have to have big screens in there. So artists can't afford to tour unless it's at full capacity, and that's a big difference. But the other side of it is concerts are a social experience, and going to the cinema is great. I love going to the cinema, but you can still watch a film on Netflix. You're still watching the film. A live performance isn't really, it doesn't come across in the same way if it's streamed. Yes, you can go and watch Pink Floyd at Pompeii from the 1960s or whenever that was filmed, but it's not the same as being in the gig, being in the venue. And so much of a live concert is that shared emotional experience. Everybody remembers their first concert. You remember their favorite concert, their favorite venue, their favorite artist, and it's that social occasion. You can go on your own to a concert and be part of a crowd. Same with going to a nightclub and dancing. You can dance in your own kitchen on your own, but it's not the same as being at a club. And I think that's we've all found that a real challenge, and I think audiences have found that a real challenge. From a mental health and well-being point of view as well. So it's not just the economics of not having gigs. It's the impact on you socially and emotionally.
Yeah, and grassroots music venues will be suffering all over the country, and places like King Tut's and all these sort of places are going to really suffer in this downtime. I mean, what do you think could be done to help these sort of people? I mean, obviously everyone's got their own financial issues to deal with, but I know certainly Glasgow Film Theatre have been so grateful for anyone that's put their hand in the pocket to donate, because of the Glasgow Film Festival. Glasgow Film Theatre is a not-for-profit charity organisation, and everyone's been helping. But obviously there's music venues around there that might, just be taking such a big hit. From your point of view, what do you think people can do to help out in that scenario?
Well, some people have gone down a crowdfunding route. I didn't want to do that with King Tut's because, we rely on audiences, all the time. But I have a problem asking audiences to give us money, when they're not going to a concert. I want to give them something when they're giving us money. So we need access to government funding, and that's not been, to date, been very good, to be honest. There's been a bit for venues. More so down south, I have to say. The funding that's been available for venues has been higher down there, significantly higher. And there's been a disparity in the funds that have been available up here. There's a grassroots music venues fund, which if you went for that, then you couldn't go for the cultural and venues funding. And the funding that was given by that to venues was often 10 times the amount of the funding that was available through the grassroots music venue fund. So there needs to be a bit more, there needs to be more fairness and openness about how funds are giving out, but there needs to be more funds given out, particularly if we're going to be closed for longer. And I think that's really important. And that same ask is there of English venues in, from UK government, and we have to ask Scottish government for support. So that support needs to be better, and it needs to come, keep going, but be more substantial than it has been, better targeted as well, because we need venues to be there when we come out of this. We need production companies to be there as well. Not just if the artists are still around. We need tour managers, we need sound engineers, we need bus drivers as well, for people going on the road. So we need everything to open up, and for the infrastructure to be there. We need promoters to still be in business, and because they're the ones who take the risks and quite often put the shows into the venues, certainly the larger venues. I mean, smaller venues tend to self-promote a lot, but that support needs to be there. The support will be there from audiences. Everything I've seen, dismiss that Creative Scotland study, which I don't think holds any weight really, and it was not really representative. Audiences are desperate to get back to live music when it's safe to do so. So we have a large amount of confidence about the future. It's just we don't know when that future is going to be. There's light at the end of the tunnel. We just don't know where it is. And obviously, the progress of the vaccine is great news for everybody. But we need to know what do the conditions need to look like for us to be able to open without physical distancing. Is it all of the adult population vaccinated, which the Scottish government seems to be saying that's going to be July. Okay, so can we open in July? Is our question. Will it be before then? But with reduced capacities, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of questions be answered. We're always told we need to wait until kind of mid-Feb to late Feb before all data is analysed. So we accept that. And I know the Prime Minister's making a big statement on the 22nd of February. Scottish Government will probably make statements around similar time, and that's when we hope there'll be information about the relaxing of physical distancing, and if not when that will be, what the conditions will need to be for that to be the case. Well,
yeah, absolutely. I think the demand will be there when it returns. I think people will be, and myself included, desperate to go to stand in the crowd full of people again and watch, have a beer and watch, some live music. As weird as that will feel to be surrounded like that with a bunch of people, but it is something that takes time, and yeah, hopefully we will return to that at some point. But yeah, basically, Geoff, thanks so much for just coming on, just have a little chat about that. Obviously, Glasgow Film Festival, we always like to try and have that connection with music every year, and we would love to in the future do more sort of live music events that sort of partnering in with Glasgow Film Festival and stuff. So definitely, going forward, hopefully we can, have, the opportunity to do that. But it'd be amazing. But well, wrapping up on time now. I don't want to take up any more of anybody's time, but I just want to thank you all for coming along and having a chat and joining in. Thank you so much for eloquently describing your picks, Jamie and Katie, and Geoff. Thanks so much for coming on and just giving us a little bit more background into the music side of things, because I know from a cinema point of view we have all the info, but from a music point of view we maybe don't, and it's just anything that we can shed some light on is great. So yeah, guys, again, thank you so much for taking the time. And just before we go, if there's anything any of you would like to say to the Glasgow film audience, you've got the floor. So please do. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I'll just say dive in, because to be honest, it's usually the best films I see at GFF are usually the ones I know nothing about. So like, just because if it's got a big name or a big director, that's great. But I'm sure if you just take a chance on a smaller film with a first-time director or maybe a less well-known cast, you'll probably have a great time. That's what I've found over the years.
Amazing.
I think that's great. I think Parasite would be a great example of that, I think, But I love going to film. I've always loved the experience, and supporting local cinema is really important, and in Glasgow and Scotland, we're very lucky to have the GFT. It's a fantastic cinema with great programming.
Oh, you're all too kind. Oh, so I'll get you on every week just to say nice things about Glasgow Film Festival. But yeah, okay, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to chat, and please do stay safe. And just to anyone watching, the final episode of In the Frame will be a week today at the same time, and it will be a chat around the programming team's picks. So I'll be joined by Alan Hunter and Alison Gardner, my bosses, the co-directors of the Glasgow Film Festival. So should be a very fun conversation, and yeah, I can't wait to speak to you all then. But yeah, guys, please stay safe, and I'll speak to you soon, and hopefully see you in person soon as well. Okay, thanks everyone for watching. Bye.